all for joining us today. Chris Howard, Managing Director at PSquared Associates, is going to be presenting in times of need, give to receive, how people and process deliver amazing results. So we're all looking forward to that. Chris has had many years experience in financial and commercial roles across multi-industry and companies, from multinational global corporations to UK-based SMEs. And in 2022, he set up his own company, PSquared Associates, and that name comes from what he considers to be the most important drivers of profitable, sustainable businesses: people and process. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Chris.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Lois. Good afternoon, all. Hopefully you'll find this this piece relatively entertaining, and hopefully go away with a few refreshed views on approaches to things. Kind of just to frame things, sort of as we approach challenging times at the moment, so the old austere methods of sort of removing heads to remove cost. I think that most of us on this would have been through those times and kind of felt the pain of those sort of short-term approaches to life. This sort of presentation is hopefully sort of dragging people out of the day-to-day and trying to force them to think about, how do we actually, as leaders, how do we take the difficult options, and how do we make sure that we have a more sustainable method of growing a profitable business, and especially as we sort of approach the challenges that we can all see in the not too distant future. So hopefully you'll leave with some sort of refreshed ideas, and you'll also leave with a couple of challenges from myself as well. So without further ado, time for a quiz. Everybody loves a good quiz. Feel free to put the responses to this in the chat as you see fit. I'm going to ask you a question, and then what I'll do is I'll do a real slow and painful reveal via the way of 5 clues, again, just to hopefully generate a few thoughts. So the question is, what's the single biggest resource that we have at our disposal? Again, feel free to put the responses in the chat. Okay, I feel I might have misled you slightly looking at some of the responses, so I'll start to reveal the clues. So the first clue is we regularly waste it. That's possibly wiped a few of the responses out. Second is we all want more of it. There's never enough of it. It can be measured, and we all cherish it. So the response, I think I saw a few of the correct answers, and hopefully I'll kind of get on to explaining why I see it as this. With the correct answer being time.
She can go outdoors. She just chooses not.
So why did I say time and not people? Because people is kind of the general answer that we receive to this. People without time is a wasted resource. If you can provide time to people, then you've got a super powerful resource. So kind of a couple of my favorite times there on the right hand side: coffee time and party time. So hopefully I'll kind of come on to why time, and sort of explain it through business, but also through sort of finance views, as to why I see that time is the most valuable. So another question is, how powerful would it be if we could provide more time to our employees? And again, you know, the time and people side of things. So give more time to do all of these things. I'll leave you for a couple of seconds just to have a read through. So the one that I'll pull out for me is the Stephen Covey one, or as they say in the parts of the world where I'm from, Stephen Covey. The key is not spending time but investing in it. I think as finance people, as FDs and CFOs, I think our views on money should kind of be formed around this type of approach to life. Working with owners of businesses, working with shareholders, if we can view everything as an investment versus spend, it helps us in our decision making. I think on a personal finance point of view, it's a really sort of powerful way to view as well. And certainly with time, if you're investing time, so people may say that you're spending time or wasting time if you go for a coffee or something a little bit stronger with a few pals. But are you wasting it? Are you spending it, or are you investing it? And you're investing it in relationships. Time well invested will give you boundless returns. I think some of the other ones will probably resonate with a few people as well. You know, create a calm for non-value added. How can we, you know, and the creativity one, how can we expect stressed people to be creative, to think about things differently? We challenge for problem solvers. We put relevant challenges into our people that they should be solving problems. If we're constantly loading them and overloading them with stressful situations and not providing them with the time, then how can we expect them to have the clarity of thought that's needed to solve the problems? So I've come up with a little mnemonic, because all these things are really memorable. So be bettered. It's catchy, I know. I've not copyrighted it yet, but we'll have a think. But just remember that for future thoughts. So in order to explain kind of a little bit further and sort of hopefully sort of generate some thoughts, I'm going to take everybody back up to 40,000 feet. Business is simple. CFOs and FDs, we can sometimes forget it, how simple business really is, and we get involved in the complexity within day to day. So business on a real simple model is we take a product or a service or a person, we add value to it. That value has to be value as our customers see it, and a value that our customers are willing to pay. And then we sell it, and hopefully we sell it for more than what it costs. And that's business. That's as simple as it goes. So again, from a financial point of view, we all know cash is king. I still believe that it is. I think even more so, and kind of as we start to see the effects and impacts of high inflation, cash becomes even more relevant. So we kind of follow the cash cycle through business, and again in a real simple model. So we have a cash out where we create the value, or we deliver the value. We may manufacture something, we may have to make something, we may have to deliver something. So there's a further cash out, and there's also cash out from our customers when they decide that they're willing to pay. They may have agreed a price, but price and cash, as we all know, and acceptance of price versus acceptance of actually paying for it are two completely different things, as I'm sure we've all felt the pain. So your cash out is a significant part, and then you get the cash in eventually. Your customer pays for the value that they've received. Again, super simple, and that's business, all on a slide. I'm not going to stop there though. I'm now going to move on to, so where is the cash? It's within the working capital cycle, proving again, you know, cash is king. For me, I put this slide in. It's a real simple view. Again, you know, as FD CFOs, it's day in, day out that we live and breathe this. For me, the most important kind of indicator within a business that you've got constraints is cash delays. If you've got cash delays, you've got constraints within your processes, within your business. Coming back to the original theme, time, freeing up time for people to understand those processes, to remove the constraints, to be able to then actually release those cash delays is super important. So cash delays, cash shortages, huge indication that you've got something wrong within your process. If you can find the symptom, you can cure the sickness. So to move on, so we've seen how simple business is. We've seen a simple kind of working capital and cash cycle. So let's now throw people into the mix. So our people, as many of you said, our most important resource. I still believe time and people. But let's see what happens when we throw people into the mix and we throw processes in. So we still get a product or a service or a person. We still add value, and we still get the price that the customer is willing to pay. That again is hopefully higher than the cost of the product. However, when we throw in delays, when we throw in processes, so one of the favorite examples I've got of this is working in an engineering company. I actually went on to become the managing director for that company, and we could see that there was a constraint in the time delivered to us, the time to deliver a certain product. It contained what's called U-tubes. So it was a heat exchanger, and it contained U-tubes. So these U-tubes came in a big box, and then it took 2 days to unpack these boxes and put them in order, and in the order that they had to be inserted into the exchanger. So when we could see that was a constraint, and as we sort of unpicked the constraint, the U-tubes, we went back to the supplier, and the U-tubes could be delivered in a what's known as a finger pallet, which allowed them to be automatically inserted, so they come in order, and it allowed them to be automatically inserted into the exchanger. Now there's up to 1,000, maybe 2,000 of these within a heat exchanger. So you can imagine the time pressure on doing this. When we kind of queried it internally why we hadn't been buying the finger pallets, it's because each box was £50 more. So the buyer, following his KPIs, doing his job, and again, I'm sure it's a story that resonates with a lot of people, was doing his job, following his KPIs and not paying more for the products. However, down the chain, he was causing a major constraint within the business and costing 2 people's time for 2 days to unpack the boxes. We found the constraint, we fixed it, we gave the buyer a slight tweak on his KPIs, and actually directed the buyer to work with the operational team in order to deliver the right savings to the business, not just a cash saving. On a value point of view, this is the human interaction, humans and processes. We create cost.
Okay.
All of these items that sit behind the arrows, as we're all aware, generate cost, a cost that within a business we try to pass on to our customer. So we try to pass on our inefficiencies. Again, the challenge back to us as leaders is actually, can we free up the time? Can we work with our teams to free the constraints, to reduce the costs to a price that the customer is willing to pay and how they value our product, rather than trying to build these inefficiencies within what we do. So then we get the price to our customer, which is obviously under market pressure. We also get cash delays. So kind of another favorite story is working with a business of £3 million with 300,000 over 60 days overdue. Again, a story that I'm sure will resonate with lots of you on this. And when you unpicked the reason why they had the overdues, it was a simple thing. They were a service business providing consultants, and the consultants used to send a timesheet, and then the invoice would follow into the finance department. Again, the story I'm pretty sure is familiar with a lot of you. But the consultants never communicated, never got acceptance that the timesheet was fine, and never communicated what they'd done. With quite a quick fix of a little bit of communication with the customer and making sure that the invoice goes with an expectation that on the service that's been provided, an agreement on the service that's been provided, we fixed the overdues and brought them down rapidly to less than sort of 5% overdue within a matter of 6 months. Again, releasing the cash back into the business, find the symptom, cure the sickness, and it all came around to actually creating time for the consultants just to give an extra 5 minutes. But what it did save down the line was a heck of a lot of time within credit control trying to chase in debts that weren't due. So hopefully this kind of gives you a bit of a view as to each one of these soaks time up and causes our team to spend more time on general day-to-day running of business. So how can leaders help? How can we actually help our teams to release the time and to generate the value and the cash within the business? So there's multiple tools out there. One tool for me that's kind of stuck with me, and that I use on a regular basis. I think it's just so simple and it resonates, and it's easy to explain, and it's easy to actually picture, view, and put into action. I don't know whether anybody's ever done the Stephen Covey 7 Habits for Highly Effective Managers course. We'll have all been through it, we'll have all done it, we've all gone back to our day jobs. I think for me, the tool that we can take forward is his time management matrix. Something that and any business that I walk into, you'll find it on a whiteboard somewhere, and you'll find these quadrants sat up there. Now, as leaders, we shouldn't, but I'm pretty sure that most of us can sit and agree that we spend a lot of time in quadrant 1, doing urgent and important activities. We've got to challenge ourselves, as Stephen Covey rightly says, to move from quadrant 1 into quadrant 2, onto the important and not urgent. And if any of our team or any of us find ourselves in quadrant 4, get out of it quickly, because that definitely doesn't add value to your business. So it's how do we work with our teams to get them into quadrant 2? How do we work so that they're working on important things but not urgent? It frees up the time. It frees time up for people. It frees them up to find value. It frees them up to add value, to reduce costs. And it frees them up to be, I said, remember it, to be bettered, the mnemonic from earlier. But it does free them up. And it's how do we work as leaders in order to give our teams what they need to be working in that quadrant is the challenge. So to close off, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I will thank you for listening. I believe there's going to be time for questions or further discussion. But before you leave today, I'll challenge each of you, please, to go to the Gemba, or to do a Gemba walk, as they say in Lean. And if you could all write down 2 constraints in your business that, when released, will provide time to your team before you head back to the day job and start on your quadrant 1 activities. If you could each of you do this, then I'm sure that we can provide the time to our team. We can provide the most precious resource of time to our other most precious resource of people, to enable them to deliver sustainable, profitable, growing businesses.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chris. Yes, it's always good to sort of go back to some of the basics sometimes, isn't it? And take a fresh look at things. Does anybody have anything that they particularly like to discuss with the group, or potentially ask Chris, or maybe you can give us an example of, when you've had this experience yourself? Ian?
Chris, hi. Good
Hi.
presentation. Thank you very much. Very thought-provoking. What are your thoughts about the recent activities towards moving towards a 4-day week and a 3-day weekend? It's obviously whilst we have got time constraints at the moment, there is a pressure to try and squeeze that into an even smaller space, so that then the idea presumably is that you then more thoughtful and you concentrate more. So what you're trying to do is obviously is time and is productive time, and it's trying to have more productive time. And I presume that particular direction is to try and have people that have more productive time, but obviously it's still less time. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, Ian, I think again, if I kind of take it back to the bad old days of we need to cut costs, we'll clear heads out, and then all the work drops on the already stressed remaining people. I think it's kind of a similar situation. So there's the pressure to reduce down to the 4-day week, to provide more time with people or for people. If I think the actions to release that time, to reduce the constraints and to get people working on, so it's kind of that quid pro quo sort of view of life. If people can work on those constraints and work as teams on the constraints to free up the time, then it's doable. A 4-day week, I don't think is an issue. You look from a lean perspective, and time is one of the 5 wastes of lean, and you look at how much time is actually wasted in the day. How many times have we probably turned to our teams and said, well, if you didn't stand there arguing about it for 20 minutes, you'd have been 20 minutes further on what you're thinking. I think it's just providing people with the right tools to be able to do that.
Mike, thank you.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, good afternoon all, and thanks Chris for the presentation. I'm in my world just very briefly, yes, CFO, but interim CFO for the last 20 years. Whilst we talk about time, one of the things I'm very keen and spend lots of time with clients is this understanding of efficiency versus effectiveness. Okay, so I've seen so many people come and say, look how wonderful this new system's doing, but the reality is the customer's sitting in another corner, or at least the service that's required for the customers in another corner. And that's important as well to get the message across. It's still the same number of minutes in an hour, but really getting, and it's slightly cliche, I guess, but I say CFO, the C doesn't stand for C, for chief, the C stands for commercial. Talk to the customers, who are also internal, of course. They're not customers who necessarily have to pay the bills, but people across your business who say, and you touched on it, Chris, when you said, when people start talking amongst themselves, they can see the bigger value coming to the business rather than their own department's needs. So do you come across examples yourself of just suddenly saying to people, stop being so efficient and please be effectiveness? And the bit I'd say that between the two of them, efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right thing. And sometimes that's a hard concept to get across to people because they like to be busy and making sure they're maximizing the use of the day.
Yeah, agreed, Mike. And I think, again, we'll have all seen it where we have regular meetings put in, and we'll have a meeting in our diary every week with the same people for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
What's coming out of those? What are the actions that are coming out? What's it driving? Is it effective, or is it just efficient because actually it sits in our diary? How many times do we challenge those? How many times do we challenge the regular things that we do? And I think it's just taking stock, to your point, and being effective with the time and how we spend it. And coming back to Ian's point, if you are effective, and you're not spending time being busy, you're spending time being effective, being useful, adding value to the business, then, and the 4-day week, why not a 3-day week and 4 days off?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ian, did you want to add to something that you were saying earlier on?
No, I'm just going to say I agree, and I think that it's the counter argument is that if everybody can do it in 4 days, then how much more effective and what could the business do if you got those people for 5 days, but also people are people, and they're still going to have the same constraints that you've got on their effectiveness, which is having a chat, sorting these things out. Those things aren't going to go away, but they'll just be condensed into 4 days. So I think from practical reasons, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as effective as it can be in theory.
Yeah, probably right.
Thank you. Darcy, did you want to contribute something?
Yeah, please. I mean, I found that really useful conversation discussion. I very much agree with that point about effectiveness versus efficiency, right? So, you know, in lean terms, stage one is don't optimize a process step that you can remove, and I think it is one of the great dangers that I've seen again and again when companies try and do these things. Everybody wants to focus on what they know. Everybody wants to optimize the bit they know. People are much less keen on the idea of I'm going to get rid of half my job because it's not necessary, you know. And then the idea, of course, is you go and find other things, but it's quite threatening. One of the challenges I've found with it, and I'd be interested in Chris's view in this, is people are talking a lot at the moment about VUCA, right? Volatile, uncertain, and I can't remember the other ones. But you know, the world is changing. It's changing fast, and it's changing in unpredictable ways. And when you have an optimized process, that can actually be worse because you don't have any slack, because you've designed it exactly to work efficiently. So when anything changes, it arguably the most optimal processes are the ones that suffer the most. So Chris, I just wondered if you have any thoughts in terms of how you build resilience and flexibility into processes as well as making them effective.
It's to the point of having nothing that's fixed. I think the two words that really resonate through the time that I've spent in sort of various businesses is challenge everything. And if we allow the people and our people and the good people that come to work every day to do a good job, if we allow them to challenge and give them that free space, that safe space to challenge everything, then they'll find a way of making sure that those processes don't become stuck in time. And I think it's got to be that level of flexibility. And look, I've seen some of the most creative processes, and I'm sure that we all have some of the most creative processes ever known, in order to get something into an ERP system or get something delivered. Or people are super creative. We've just got to make sure that it's right and it's the right thing, but allow that space for them to ask, to question, and to question anything and everything. And sometimes they may not do the most sensible way or the best way, but again, we've got to give people the space to make the mistakes, to make the errors, and sort of point them in the right direction if they go slightly off course. But I think it's just creating that safe space. I had a phrase when I was the MD of the engineering business, which was to create a safe, sustainable, growing business. And by safe, I meant safe for people to be able to open up, to talk, to challenge, without fear of sort of any impact on them for making that challenge.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Just raise another point on that. I think motivation for individuals is a key element as well, because I know my role covers the whole of Europe, Middle East, India, Africa, etc. But I deal with people in the States, and as an example, we've got a product going into Switzerland, and we've been saying it for a while, and it needed a separate label on the box, and it took 9 months of discussions, and sometimes there were 15 people on this call to try and put a label on the box. And I look at things in a really, really simple way, but they didn't want to solve this easily, because they were thinking, well, if we're not on all these calls, then we haven't got a job, and therefore, so their motivation is different to what the business's motivation is. So you've got to, I think, to get people to do something, you've got to give them a motivational reason why it's in their interests to do it. So if you can actually show that by doing this, this is what you will get out of it, then that's a key element. Otherwise, you'll just end up with brick walls all over the place because people are people.
Yeah, agreed, Ian.
Okay, anybody else wanting to share an experience or pose a question to Chris or Okay, well, what I would say is thank you very much, Chris, for taking the time to deliver that presentation. Very valuable and some really good insights to make us all think and reflect on. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
What I would say to everybody is that obviously we do the presentations every month, last Wednesday of every month. We've covered multiple topics so far, and if you have missed out on any that you might like to catch up on or want to see what we've done historically, then you can, if you become a member on the FD Recruit website, then you'll have access to all of those. The presentation is recorded, so Christiane will send that out to each of you later on today. And also just one other message to pass on to you. I know some of you are members of the Guild app, which is the professional app that FD Recruit has set up for CFOs and finance directors. And I think there must be about 900 of your peers on there at the moment. And it's a space where you can pose questions, seek advice, provide solutions, which is a great networking platform. So if Christiane will also include details of that if you aren't already on the Guild app. Any other questions that I can help with today? No, good. Okay. All right then. So once again, thanks, Chris, and great to have seen you all today. Thank you for joining, and hopefully see you end of April, last Wednesday in April.